everyone, my name's Anna and I'm a horticulturalist. I'm currently self-employed and I work in Sussex providing garden maintenance for people sort of locally in their own private gardens. Today I'm going to recommend I think 5 or 6 different sorts of books that will help you get started in horticulture. These books will go really well with studying long term like a diploma in City and Guilds, studying a BTEC, studying online and just studying for yourself, or just getting into gardening and learning horticulture before you sort of take a course and take that next big step. And these books are ones that I've used a lot, and I use them to this day. I use them alongside my course and I use them daily for interacting and talking to customers. It's always good to have reference books in gardening. Not only do things change, the subject itself is so vast and so massive, and there's so much to take in and learn that you're never going to know it all off the top of your head. There are definitely bits that you'll know sort of much better than the other bits, and those other bits that you're not sure of, you use a reference book 100%, especially for things like hardiness of plants and plant situations and where to plant things and planting plans and just day-to-day care and maintenance of pruning plant. Nesting season is obviously a really good thing to take into account as well, and these books will help you in those first sort of steps and help you learn and apply these things to your work. So my first book is Bob Flowerdew's Organic Gardening Bible. There'll be a common theme with these. They all seem to be called Bible, and I think it's just because people reference them so much. It's like a book that you keep going back to and that you study and study and study, because it's lots of education in these. Bob Flowerdew is an iconic person. He obviously works a lot with organic gardening, and in this book, this organic gardening book, it isn't just used for people that want to have sort of their own sort of permaculture style garden. It teaches the principles of organic gardening and humans working together with a garden. I think those are really important when you're working in a customer's garden, because you don't want to be the type of gardener that just goes in and sort of does a mow and blow of the garden, like trimming down the hedges, mowing the lawn and then leaves. You want this garden to thrive and be happy, and you want the wildlife to not be counted as sort of pests, and you want the weeds to not always be counted as weeds, because a weed is just a plant in the wrong place, and you want things to really thrive in this garden to be like a haven, like an oasis, rather than just a stark place. It talks about watering, how and when to water, and how to reduce watering, how much you should or shouldn't water, and how to reduce the need to water. It talks about mulching, how to make your own soil, your mulch, compost, and how to apply this to the plants. It talks a lot about vegetables and fruit, which after Corona is obviously a major hobby for people. People have started to pick up growing your own, and to be an expert and to be able to give advice on that is really useful. It talks about weed control, how to suppress weeds using mulch, and how to plant in the right sort of companion planting to make sure that weeds can't sort of grow through and take over, and also keep them from being, I say, pest free. I don't really like the word pest, but to keep them from being eaten or destroyed by little animals, little critters. And it also has great pictures in this book that will really sort of help you like identify your plants, and it gives you good plant names and sort of little planting plans. And his advice is just, gospel, basically, to use that word. It's really useful. It's very practical. You can see I've saved a page with my sprout bookmark. That's so typical. But yeah, if you were to get any, I'd get this one first, especially in this future of horticulture where we're not just doing the standard set square little garden, and we're really making progression into organic. The no dig method culture, everything like that is coming through. So to stay on top of it and to be a sort of good gardener, this is something I'd really recommend. For the next one, it's massive. It's on the bed. The RHS Encyclopedia of Gardening. Now, obviously, the RHS have a lot of money, and obviously they produce a lot of books yearly. I don't always advocate for the RHS, but however, this does have some really good advice. I think it's quite expensive. I don't know how much this book was. It was definitely a present. But if you can get this, I really recommend it. So it's basically like, it's sort of a similar style to Bob's in that it's got everything in it that you'll need to sort of be a gardener and grow. However, it's really formal and it's one of those things that you could never read all in one go. You have to definitely dip into this book as a reference book and a guide for certain topics and things. I would never read this book in one sitting. It's way too educational and sort of like overwhelming to take all of the information in. However, it's got a lot of science aspects in it, it's got a lot of plant names in it, it's got great advice, it will save you money long term, and it will give you a good idea as to what you're sort of studying as well, and you'll definitely reference it with your studying and your coursework. It doesn't skimp out. Like, this book has everything in it, so if you want, you know, everything you could ever need to Google for horticulture, it's probably in this book, and it's probably got a revised edition. This one, I don't know, it's probably 2014 or something, so look for the new one. And these are often floating around in charity shops as well, so if you head to a charity shop, they'll probably have a lot of RHS gardening books that you can get your hands on for quite a good price. I'm back. I just had to go get a book that I left in the other room because I was reading it yesterday. Shows how much I use it. This is the Houseplant Expert. Now, every single person that is interested in houseplants, that wants to grow houseplants, that sells houseplants, will probably have this book. I picked this up in a local National Trust garden like bookshop, and like the charity bookshop one, and they are literally everywhere. I think this cost me 50p, but I think I gave a quid because what a deal. This provides a really good info on plants by room, plants by sunlight, plants by how much water they need, and the info on watering is really good in this because obviously houseplants are notoriously difficult to look after, which is definitely sort of a myth, and this book will help you get through it and conquer any sort of plants that you just don't get on with. And if you don't get on with those plants, it will tell you exactly why you don't get on with those plants, and maybe they shouldn't be in your house because the situation just isn't right. But obviously, need to mention it again, after COVID, loads of people have shown a great interest in houseplants, and they're obviously a trending thing regardless at the moment. So if you can provide some advice to customers, or if you're just interested in studying houseplants and botany and things like that, I really recommend this book. He also has loads of other different books in his collection, and I've not read any of those, but I imagine if they're as good as this book, then you'll have a lot to learn. It also looks kind of old school, like the pictures in this one looks so 70s. I don't know if that's for all of them. They look so 70s in the room types, but like honestly, it's back in fashion, isn't it? It's back in trend. This could be your friend's kitchen up the road. So yeah, great houseplant book. Oh, and it's also really sciencey, and it will give you a lot of info on why the plant is sickly, or if there's any pests and diseases rife throughout your collection, and tell you how to stop it and control that situation, because obviously inside, once a plant gets a pest, it spreads quite quickly, and that can be devastating for your collection that you've spent money on. So he gives you really good tips on that. The next one is a bit different. It's called Wild Food, and this is by Roger Phillips, and this is interesting because obviously we're moving more towards that like cottagecore style gardening that I was talking about with like bulb flower dews, organic gardening and mulching, and this is about foraging and collecting your own food out and about, and in an accessible way. Like, lots of the flowers and plants he uses are things you can pick up sort of along accessible paths at the beach, you know, and places like that. So you can, like, this is quite accessible for people, but obviously when it becomes woodland plants, that's a bit more difficult. But they also get put into very, very easy to make recipes. So it doesn't matter if you're not good at cooking, or, you know, if you just really don't enjoy cooking and it's something you just don't want to do. These recipes, like one of the recipes is pancakes. Like, it's quite easy to get on board with. And I thought it was a really good book to recommend because people often ask your advice on like, be really careful, because I'm not going to tell you to recommend people to eat a mushroom off the street or things like that, and you have to be really confident in your knowledge to know whether or not you should eat something that you've picked up and foraged wild. So please read the book, but please be careful. But it's really, really useful to be able to say like, I'm growing this plant for this reason, because the plants aren't weeds. You can grow these plants, and to be able to mix them in with your grow your own and as like a potager style garden, I think it's really good to know what wild native plants you can grow that will provide, well, sustenance throughout the year, because he tells you how to store it for year-long use also. So yeah, I really recommend this book for cottagecore wild eating, as it's probably not called, but how I'm calling it. Number 5, sticking with the wild theme, is A Wilder Life. Now this is a hybrid crossover between the US and the UK by Celestine Maddy and Abby Churchill. I apologise if I got your name wrong there. But it's basically about just getting involved in gardening, and I think horticulture, when you study it, can be very geared towards the theory and the science, which is obviously what you need and is excellent because you'll be able to grow the plants to the best of their ability. However, you also need to know that gardening's about being free and using the plants and using the space and enjoying it and having fun, and this book really helps you sort of get stuck in and learn different things. They give you like little to-do lists at the beginning of each season. It's all listed seasonally. It gives you things to do. It, you know, puts your garden to use in a way you wouldn't think of. It makes you think about medicines and herbs, and gives you like DIY projects to do, and it obviously like bumps up wildlife and increases your knowledge on just like being in touch with your garden. That's so like cheesy, but like it makes you think about your garden as a practical space rather than as sort of like an aesthetically pleasing space. Like your garden has a purpose and has a use. It's not just something you sit in and read, although that's fine. But anyway, yeah, it's all listed out in a very easy to read, easy to digest way. So that's a book you could read in one go and not necessarily always have to reference. And next, how could this be a book review without a Beth Chatto book? This book has really helped me understand how no space in a garden goes to waste, how every space in a garden can be utilised, and you don't have to specifically create borders to plant plants in and stick it with plants you like. Absolutely not. This is the opposite. This is, you have a bit of woodland and it's just trees and dead sticks on the floor. That's not good enough. I mean, if you like it, that's fine. But like, this book will inspire you and tell you how to grow plants in these certain situations that need to grow there, that will thrive there, that don't need watering, won't need attention, it's all low maintenance, and it tells you right plant, right place. It's ecological planting, so the plant will grow and thrive in this situation, and that's exactly what you need when you're, you know, putting a lot of money on the line, and it could be your customers' money or your money, and you're planting these plants and they have to survive and live, and you want them to live their sort of best lives, as people say, and this book will really help inspire you and educate you on that. It also really opens your eyes as to a whole host of different plants. Like often when you're working with gardens or gardeners, you find that you're stuck in a certain list and group of plants every day, and you sort of see the same plants and you know all their names. And I found especially that I was getting in a rut, and I was like, well, I can name every plant in this garden, I don't know if that's good enough anymore. So it gives you a sort of expansion and opens your eyes to a whole list of new plants that you can use, and that you forget there's like 400,000 perennials or something like that, and you probably see and use like 100 of them day to day. Expand your knowledge, expand your plant lists, go out on a limb, buy really random plants and enjoy them and see them thrive in their sort of natural habitat. And this is specifically designed for shade loving, because obviously there's her garden still remains open, I believe. I have to check COVID rules, but open to this day. And it also has excellent photos and pictures, which I always think is really useful for a gardening book, because without pictures and photos you don't often know what they're talking about or what the end result is and why you're planting all these plants. So really, really recommend this, because obviously everyone has a north facing patch of garden in their garden. No one probably doesn't have some sort of little north facing corner or sort of northwest northeast facing corner that's a really difficult one. Fill it with plants from this book and it will be transformed, and you won't have that grotty little nook in the garden that you don't utilize anymore, or that's where you have the grotty old shed. And finally, I've got the Gardener's Pocket Bible. Can you tell a difference? It's much thinner, it's much smaller. She's chosen a small book for once, goodness me. I'm called Bible again. I don't know what that's about. I think it's just, anyway. So this book is a bit like Bob's in the fact it goes sort of task by task and different subjects and talks about organic gardening and how to sort of set up your garden in the structure of things, but it's much smaller. I would keep this one in the van. You can tell it's not been in the van though, because it's completely pristine. This one was relatively inexpensive. I think it was like £10 from Amazon. I'm going to try and link all the books below. But books like gardening books, I would check a charity shop first and foremost, because that's where you'll most likely find good books. And it's to your discretion, you know, if you find a good book, don't not buy it because it's not on this list. Just buy whatever, especially if it's at a good price. But this one's definitely more a reference sort of glossary terms, dip in and out book. It's not all your gardening knowledge. However, if you're in a client's garden, they ask you a question, you're not sure, it does good info on sort of hardiness, zones. It does good info on watering and mulching and weeds and when to plant fruit and veg, so it's definitely good to have on hand. I wouldn't say it's necessarily up to the standard of studying horticulture. However, if you're working in people's gardens, if you're growing your own vegetables, I would definitely recommend it. So that's all the books I would recommend for sort of your first starter pack. As I said, go to charity shops, find books that you like the look of and buy them if they're a really good price. Gardening is a never-ending cap on knowledge. There's no one that knows all of horticulture. There's definitely people up there that know a lot, but there's no cap or limit on it. So you've just got to go out and enjoy reading these books and digest all the information that you can, and lots of them are glossary, so you can do it in bits. You know, I find it quite hard to read a whole formal theory book in one go, so try and break it down into really digestible chunks and enjoy what you're reading. And you know, gardening, people don't expect you to know it on the spot, so if you have to use a reference book or Google something, that's absolutely fine. It's all about fun and growing plants, you know, in a good, healthy, sustainable way. So hope you've enjoyed my list, and the next video will be learning plant names and Latin, which is another thing I get loads of questions on, and it can frustrate people. So if you want to see that video, that will be coming up next. Anyway, thank you for watching.